The Art of Indifference by Manson. There is a question that often comes to our minds. Which is what I really want out of life? Or what is my real goal in the world? When most people are asked this question, their answer is usually achieving happiness, which comes in the form of building a family or creating wealth or obtaining a position, a scientific certificate, a sports body, or even traveling to different parts of the world. But in fact, this is an expected answer to the extent that it does not mean anything. Consequently, many of us reach nothing, and this in turn causes anxiety, stress, anger, and miserable life. But there is another question that draws attention and makes us think more carefully and focused, a question that many people do not pay attention to, which is, what pain do you desire in your life? What do you think you are willing to suffer and fight for? Life itself is a kind of suffering that the rich suffer because of their wealth, the poor suffer because of their poverty, and those who do not have a family suffer because there is no family, and those who have a family suffer because they have a family, and the employees suffer from their jobs, and the unemployed suffer from the lack of jobs for them. In this question, you will know exactly what you want from life, and here comes the role of the art of indifference, as not being overly concerned is what will save your life. In order to understand the meaning of the art of indifference, you must consider the following 3 points. First, that not paying too much attention does not mean indifference at all, but rather it means that you care in the way that comforts you. Second, that in order not to worry about difficulties, you must pay attention to the thing that is most important to you. Third, whether or not you realize this, you always choose what you give your attention to. Life is full of various kinds of suffering, so you must choose the suffering that you will fight. In 1983, guitarist Dave Mustaine was fired from his band, and the band had just signed a contract to record their first album. Sitting on the bus heading to Los Angeles, he was annoyed and worried about what happened, as obtaining recording contracts was not an easy thing, and he might have missed the opportunity of a lifetime. But after a while, he managed to overcome these concerns and decided to create a new band that would be able to outperform the first band. And he made his old colleagues feel remorse as a result of his expulsion from her. The idea of revenge did not leave his mind, and Dave was able to create a new band. After 2 years, the band managed to record their first album, which entered the Golden List. His new band was the legendary Megadeth band, which has sold more than 25 million albums. And she was able to play her music in various countries of the world, but unfortunately for Dave, his band that fired him was Metallica, which is considered one of the greatest rock bands of all time, as it had managed to sell more than 180 million albums around the world. And in an exclusive interview with Dave, he stated that he considers himself a failure despite all the achievements he has achieved, because he was unable to overcome his group that expelled him. This story is a living example of the importance of choosing the right values and standards when we measure our success or failure, as Dave was measuring his success or failure by the criterion of overcoming the faction that expelled him, and therefore he wrote on himself permanent failure. And from here it becomes clear that there are good and bad values and standards. And good standards are defined as based on reality and socially constructive, and can be controlled and measured such honesty, defense of oneself and others, charity, and humility. In contrast, bad values are defined as superstitious, imaginative, socially destructive, and cannot be controlled and measured, such as domination through violence, striving to please everyone, wealth for the sake of wealth, and keenness to always occupy the center of attention. If you want to change your view of your problems, you must change what you consider to be of great value and change the values by which you measure your success or failure. William James came from a wealthy family, as his father was one of the most prominent businessmen in the world. In the United States of America, but William had been suffering since his birth from many health problems that were constantly threatening his life. Hearing and back spasms make him unable to sit or stand, and because of these problems, William used to spend most of his time at home and did not have many friends, as he used to spend his time drawing, and when he grew up and became a man, no one accepted to buy his business. So his father decided to use his extensive relationships to secure a seat for James at Harvard Medical School. But William was not comfortable in this specialty, as his various pathological problems were hindering him from studying medicine. So he soon left the university and decided to go with a group of anthropologists to the Amazon forest and regret his failure again, as he could not bear his weak body, the harsh atmosphere there, and he returned again to the United States of America, where he fell into a deep depression and began planning to end his life. But one day, he was reading lectures by the philosopher Charles Peirce, which revealed his philosophy that man should he considers himself 100% responsible for every event that happens in his life, regardless of who is to blame. James decided to adopt this idea, and the result was that William James became the father of American psychology, as his works were translated into dozens of different languages. And he became a teacher at the University of Harvard, and began touring the world to give his lectures, and he called this idea that he adopted the name of rebirth, and attributed to it the credit for what happened to him. The content of this story is that a person must realize and believe that he is responsible for everything that happens to him regardless of the surrounding external circumstances. He certainly cannot control what happens or will happen to him, but he is always able to control how he interprets it, as well as how he responds to it. Take responsibility for everything that happens in your life, regardless of who is to blame. Death is one of the facts that cannot be anyone can deny it. Every soul will taste death. Although this truth is difficult and uncomfortable for many people, but it always has a huge impact on the way we live and the decisions we make. St. Becker. The Denial of Death, which is considered one of the most influential intellectual and philosophical works during the 20th century, as he wrote it while on his deathbed after suffering from colon cancer. In his ability to visualize, imagine, and think, where he can imagine himself in hypothetical situations in the past, present, or future, and thus realizes the inevitability of his death at some point, and this is what generates in him what is called the fear of death, which is an existential anxiety that covers everything we think and everything we do. And this it leads us to the second idea from Becker's book, which is that realizing the fact that we will perish one day makes us think and work to leave a footprint that remains after our bodies perish. And this is what he called the Immortality Project, that will immortalize our names throughout history. By applying this idea by putting their names on buildings, sculpting statues for them, drawing paintings that immortalize them, or even writing a book. And also, we can say that human civilization is only the result of immortal projects established by men and women who lived before us, so they became the tide. The idea of the Immortality Project is one of the negative ideas because on a collective level it may lead to the outbreak of wars, revolutions, or mass killings, as happened in the First and Second World Wars, and even at the individual level. His realization of the project of immortality leads to intense anxiety and depression. Fortunately, there is a way that you can overcome this idea, and it is simply to use the art of indifference, where you focus on the present and the present moment. Get rid of the thoughts of the project of immortality. Death is right.